off at number 10, Sandy Island. Also known as the Phantom Island, this peculiar location was first discovered by the famous British explorer Captain James Cook in 1774. Now, what's crazy about Sandy Island is that it was documented on maps, globes, and even nautical charts for 238 years. But now if you go to Google Maps, you will see no such island. The reason being is that in 1979, it was quite literally undiscovered, as apparently no landmass existed there. But even so, it remained on Google Maps until 2012. This seemingly conflicting information made many wonder if there is something that we aren't being told about the strange island, or non-island, I suppose. And so naturally, a conspiracy theory began, stating that this undiscovered island actually was there and that we are being lied to. Now, I'm not about to jump quite to that conclusion, however, I will admit that it isn't every day that something becomes undiscovered, so it does make sense to wonder if there is something going on behind the scenes. However, I guess we will never know for sure. Next up at number 9, Blurred House. So, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure if this qualifies as terrifying in the usual sense. However, it is certainly mysterious, and so I couldn't help myself from adding it to today's list. Located in Stockton-on-Tees, England, there is an inexplicable blurring of a random house that has perplexed neighbors, tourists, and even the residents themselves since 2009. Of course, when things like this happen, people like to make their own conclusions, and so rumors involving crime or aliens began spreading about the property. But in reality, the truth was much more unnerving, that no one could actually explain or figure out why it was banned for public viewing. In fact, according to the current resident, quote, "I've been in this house since 2000, but I have no idea why you can't see it." Which would mean at one point you could see it, and then 9 years later it was suddenly not suitable for the public to have access to? So, is there something spooky about this house that Google doesn't want us to know? Certainly seems that way. Coming in at number 8, Baker Lake. Up in a remote location of Nunavut, Canada, there is a seemingly innocuous place called Baker Lake that for some mysterious reason is not fully visible on Google Maps. In fact, if you do a quick search, there is actually a long black strip that covers a good chunk of the area, and as I'm sure you can imagine, it has garnered a terrifying conspiracy theory to explain why that is. The theory states that this black strip is actually covering extraterrestrial beacons that the government secretly brought down to Earth in 1972. The theory then goes on to explain that these top secret beacons exert powerful electromagnetic fields that disrupt Earth's natural energy grids, which in turn have altered the weather and have been used to focus the Earth's energy in undisclosed ways. Further, there are some out there who propose that because these alleged beacons are stolen space property, it has caused a massive war with aliens, hence the uprising in alleged UFO sightings. Now, in reality, we have no concrete evidence as to why this is blurred out, but whatever it is, it must be for a good reason. Next up at number 7, Jeannette Island. Located somewhere in the East Siberian Sea, this mysterious tiny island measures just 1.2 miles in length, and according to the powers that be, we are not supposed to know about it. First discovered in the late 19th century during the Jeannette expedition, this icy landmass and the ominous Google Maps blob that covers it have been the subject of numerous conspiracies, ranging from the usual alien stuff to it being a top secret government base for secret or evil deals amongst world leaders. Now, one thing we do know about this place is that there have been some issues over the years about who the island legally belonged to, with the US and Russia often butting heads over ownership. This has, of course, lended its hand to the evil political military base narrative, but for all we know, the truth could be even more terrifying. Coming in at number 6, former Sansi UFO houses. When construction on these peculiar houses began in 1978, they were marketed to be vacation resorts for US military officers coming from their East Asian postings. But as you might have noticed, they have an extremely futuristic look to them, hence why they got the nickname UFO houses. However, the bubbly pod-like architecture wasn't the only strange thing about these houses. A mere 2 years after construction began, the project was abandoned and never finished due to several car accidents and a number of construction workers who took their own lives on the job. This of course caused a huge loss on the investment and they were forced to end the project. The plan from there was to tear down all the buildings despite a major public pushback, and eventually in 2010 all the UFO houses were demolished. But of course, this still didn't answer the mystery on everyone's mind. What was behind all this tragedy, and why were they so hell-bent on destroying the buildings? Well, there are a few theories. Some believe that the site was the formal burial ground for Dutch soldiers and that the workers had been cursed during construction, while another theory claims that the tragedies were due to the bisecting of the Chinese dragon sculpture located near the resort gates. And of course, the shape of the buildings drew in conspiracy theorists who claim aliens were the reason for death and that they could have threatened the company to tear it down. So considering the buildings no longer exist, they could have very well been something they tried to keep from us. Coming in at number 5, Vaz Island. Way back in the 1920s, the Red Army began searching for a discreet place to build a military complex for inventing, producing, and testing biological weapons. They wanted something small and far away from the Soviet borders so as not to draw attention. And eventually by 1948, such a place was found. Almost immediately, a top-secret Soviet lab began testing agents such as smallpox, anthrax, and plague, among others. However, what they didn't see coming was that the island, once split between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, would begin to grow in size once the Aral Sea began drying up in the 1960s. Then fast forward to 1971 and a weaponized smallpox was accidentally released from the lab, infecting 10 people, 3 of whom lost their life. And by the 1990s, the secrecy of the lab got compromised. All island inhabitants were evacuated, leaving the base completely abandoned by 1991. However, in their haste to leave, many of the containers were not properly destroyed or sealed. And so over time, these containers began to leak, contaminating the grounds for decades. Now, the good news is that by 2002, a lot of the sites were decontaminated, but many areas remain contaminated and it's still one of the most feared and deadly places in the world. Coming in at number 4, underwater pyramids. Located in the Bahamas, this photo found in Google Maps has left many thinking that they discovered underwater pyramids. Now, I know, this is a full conspiracy theory, but I mean, what else do you expect to find when Google Maps has blurred out seemingly normal places across the globe? The main conspiracy surrounding these alleged underwater pyramids is that they are living proof of the long-lost city of Atlantis, or at the very least, proof of some ancient Aztec civilization. But of course, there are others out there who claim these underwater pyramids all have to do with aliens. The mysterious structure is estimated to measure between 3.5 to 11 miles across, based on the photos, although no one knows for sure as you can't get to the structure to see for yourself. If it is in fact a pyramid, and the size that many believe it to be, it would be the biggest pyramid ever built. But seeing as though no one can visit them, it might be a long while before we know if these pyramids prove any kind of extraterrestrial involvement on Earth. Coming in at number 3, Amchitka Island. Once home to the Aleut people for over 2,500 years, Amchitka Island has had no permanent population since 1832. In 1836, when the United States purchased Alaska, they gained control of the territory, and it's likely that this purchase had a lot to do with the declining population. However, that's not why it's blurred from the public view. Beginning in the 50s and up until the 70s, Amchitka was used by the US Atomic Energy Commission as a site for underground nuclear detonations, and during these 20 or so years, this island became known as the location of one of the largest underground tests ever conducted in US history. At the time, quite a bit of controversy followed what was going on at the island, mostly due to the fear that the tests could cause several environmental impacts and desolate the land, which frankly they were not wrong about. While not entirely confirmed, it is the general belief that the controversial nuclear past of this island is the reason behind the ominous blur, as it's not somewhere Google is quick to advertise as a place to visit. Coming in at number 2, GROM headquarters. If you have ever Googled Warsaw, Poland, you may or may not have come across a strange group of buildings that look like mysterious blobs compared to the rest of the city around it. Well, as it turns out, this is no accident. Those buildings are GROM headquarters, which is essentially Poland's Special Forces building. Now, I'll be honest, there is not much you can find about these headquarters. All I can find out about this top secret group is that they rescued CIA agents from a mission gone wrong in Desert Storm back in 1991. And apparently, whatever else it is they are up to, they do not want you to know about. Which, I mean, I guess is kind of the point. So as much as I'm sure many of us would like to know what goes on in this super secret Polish spy headquarters, I'm afraid that information is highly classified and their exact location will continue to remain a secret from the public. And last up in our number 1 spot, 2207 Seymour Avenue. Once the home of the beyond evil Ariel Castro, there is no conspiracy that comes with why this house is blurred on Google Maps, only a truly terrifying reality. The horrors in this house began in the mid-90s when Ariel was married to a woman named Grimilda Figueira. Ariel was extremely abusive towards his wife, but despite cracking her skull and causing an eventual terminal brain tumor from his actions, the domestic violence arrest did not result in an indictment. By the late 90s, things began to get even scarier for Grimilda, and so she moved out, took their 4 offspring, and filed for full custody. But again, no charges were pressed against him. However, his abusive backstory with his wife is not the reason for the infamous reason you can't see this house. It's because shortly after their divorce, between the years of 2002 to 2004, Ariel kidnapped 3 young women and held them captive in this house until 2013. His victims, Amanda Berry, Michelle Knight, and Gina DeJesus, were starved, beaten, and endured unspeakable psychological and physical acts at this monster's hands, until finally in 2013 when Amanda noticed a door was left unlocked and saw a neighbor walking down the street. Amanda screamed for help and the neighbor ran to the house, broke through the door, allowing Amanda to make a valiant escape with her 6-year-old daughter. She promptly called 911 and authorities arrived in minutes, saving the other 2 victims. The case made international headlines and Ariel Castro was rightfully sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years without possibility of parole. As part of the plea bargain, the house was actually demolished, but still the story was so evil that it remains blurred on Google Maps forever.
At number 10 is the Island of Dolls in Mexico. Despite its World Heritage Site status alongside Mexico City, Xochimilco has garnered a reputation for its Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. Hidden amidst a labyrinth of canals, this place is famous for the countless dolls and doll parts that dangle from trees and lie scattered amongst the grass. It looks like something straight out of a horror film, but the truth behind this eerie display is even more unsettling. The island was once home to a man named Julian Santa Barea, who took up residence there. Barea's journey into the bizarre began after he found an unalived body in a nearby canal. Terrified by this tragic discovery, he started collecting dolls and displaying them around the island. He believed that these dolls had the power to ward off evil spirits and keep him safe. It's a creepy concept to say the least. For the brave souls out there, you can hire a boat and attempt to convince the driver to take you to the island. From the safety of the water, you can observe the decaying house, the hanging dolls, and the unsettling atmosphere of the place. But let me tell you folks, this is one of those locations where it's probably best to admire from afar. The Island of Dolls is steeped in disturbing history that's best left unexplored. At number 9 is Kolmanskop, Namibia. A real-life ghost town has a story that might give you the chills. See, back in 1908, it was a bustling diamond mining hub, a place of extravagance and wealth. As fate would have it, richer diamond deposits were discovered south of Kolmanskop, leading to an instant exodus of this fair-weathered inhabitants. Today, this once thriving town is an eerie, sand-filled labyrinth of abandoned houses. is not just an ordinary ghost town. Kolmanskop is famous for its appearances in movies like Dust Devil and The King is Alive. However, it's also renowned for its sinister aura. Those diapilated structures are far from safe, with some on the brink of collapse. Add to the ever-shifting sands, which can easily trap the unsuspecting explorer. Yet the creepiness doesn't end there. Kolmanskop is a breeding ground for the paranormal stories and eerie occurrences. Many who've dared to enter these forsaken houses have reported strange and unsettling experiences. So while it might be tempting to explore the place, it's best to leave it off your bucket list and let Kolmanskop remain undisturbed in its eerie solitude. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is George's Church in Czech Republic. This is one of those abandoned places that should stay abandoned. Built back in 1352, this church has faced its fair share of troubles. Fires kept trying to claim it over the centuries, and things got even spookier in 1968 when the roof decided to collapse during a funeral service. The congregation thought it was haunted, and they wisely steered clear. But that didn't stop robbers and vandals from having a field day with it. Fast forward to 2012, and an art student decided to give the place a new lease on life by filling it with 30 ghost sculptures. Now it's known as the Ghost Church, and tourists from all around the world snap eerie photos and hang out with these lifeless specters. It's a creepy yet fascinating place, but remember, some abandoned spots should remain abandoned for good. Don't bother the ghosts. At number 7, Marco Island Dome Homes in Florida. These bizarre sci-fi-like structures are like something straight out of a Star Wars movie. Built back in 1981, they were meant to be a super cool, eco-friendly getaway for wealthy oil tycoons' family. But nature had other plans, and Florida's unforgiving weather and rising sea turned these homes into something out of a post-apocalyptic landscape. You won't find anyone living in these homes today, as it's highly unlikely anyone ever will. They stand as testament to man's ambition and nature's power. There are all kinds of theories and legends about why they exist, but the truth is, they're just a stark reminder that even the grandest human creations can be overtaken by the environment. So if you're thinking of exploring these dome houses, be cautious, and maybe leave the Jedi robes at home. At number 6 is the Buzludza Monument, nestled in the heart of Bulgaria. Imagine a place that looks like a UFO touchdown site. This bizarre structure was constructed towards the end of the Cold War and was intended to serve as the grandiose headquarters for the Bulgarian Communist Party. Decked out with posters of Lenin and Marx and a ceiling adorned with a glimmering red star, this place was no stranger to the strange events and political grandeur. But here's the twist. This intriguing monument was abandoned and sealed off from the public's prying eyes back in 1989. So while the temptation to explore this otherworldly dome is strong, it's vital to heed the keep out signs and respect the history this place holds, even if it means leaving your inner adventurer dormant. At number 5 is the Bielitz-Heilstatten Hospital in Germany, folks. This is a place where history and horror truly converge. This hospital's got a sinister past that'll send shivers down your spine. It's not just a spooky building, it's practically an encyclopedia of nightmares. It played host to tuberculosis patients, and if that's not eerie enough, it also tended to mustard gas and machine pew-pew victims during World War I, even harboring the infamous guy, the bad guy. Fast forward to World War II, and it was the go-to spot for fascist soldiers' medical needs. Post-World War II, the Soviets took over, using it as a military hospital until the Berlin Wall fell. Now, only a few wards are in use, but the rest, well, they're slowly being reclaimed by nature and vandals. Walk through those abandoned surgery and psychiatric wards, and you'd think you're on a set of American Horror Story Asylum. At number 4 is Power Plant IM in Charleroi, Belgium, which might pique your curiosity as it's an abandoned industrial marvel, but it's on our list of top 10 places to steer clear of for a reason. Built back in 21, that being 100 years ago, not 2, this mammoth coal-burning facility boasted a colossal cooling tower capable of chilling 480,000 gallons of water every minute during its prime. However, its energy production came at a significant environmental cost, contributing to a staggering 10% of Belgium's carbon dioxide emissions. Greenpeace took notice and successfully lobbied for its closure in 2007. While the towering remnants of the power plant IM offer an eerie, picturesque backdrop, stepping inside is a risky proposition. The abandoned structures hide potential hazards, including structural instability and toxic remnants. This isn't a journey for the faint of heart, but rather an ill-advised attempt to explore a place where safety takes a backseat. So if you're after adventure, there are certainly safer destinations to satiate your curiosity about abandoned locations. At number 3 is Kennecott, Alaska, a once bustling mining town witnessed a flourishing copper industry worth a jaw-dropping $200 million from 1911 to 1938. That's like all kinds of billions now. It was a complete package. They had their own hospital, a skating rink, a tennis court, and even a dairy. But the years have not been kind to this place. Most of the buildings have been left to rot over 6 decades. It's a hauntingly beautiful ghost town, a snapshot of the past's glory. The National Park Service swooped in, taking control of the many structures and lands in 1998. Today you can visit the visitor center between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and if you want a unique event venue, the Recreation Hall is actually up for rent. I wouldn't. At number 2, Lake Retian Bell Tower in Italy, a mysterious relic of the past emerging from the depths of Regency, a product of human intervention. The eerie beauty of this 14th century tower jutting out of the water gives off a surreal, otherworldly vibe. It's a bit like something you'd find in a fairy tale, but trust me, you're not gonna be in a Disney movie here. What makes it even more intriguing is the history behind it. See, beneath the calm waters lie the remains of a submerged village intentionally sacrificed to build the dam. Their stories, hidden beneath the surface, offer a haunting reminder of the past. Though it may seem like an inviting adventure, don't be too hasty. The lake might freeze in the winter, allowing you to walk right up to the tower, but there are some dangers in doing that, obviously. At number 1, Nicosia International Airport in Cyprus. It's a real haunting place, and it's got a history that's both fascinating and eerie. Back in the day when it was a bustling airport, a place where people were coming and going, embarking on exciting journeys. But then, in '74, the Turkish invasion of Cyprus happened, and the whole landscape changed. The airport was abandoned, and what's left now is like a time capsule that's been untouched for nearly 50 years. The planes that once soared through the skies are there, but they've turned into rusty relics of aviation history, just sitting out in the open exposed to the elements. It's like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie where the world has moved on, but this place is stuck in time. But that's not all. Inside the terminal, the check-in counters and boarding areas have all gathered thick layers of dust and occasional bird droppings. It's like a scene from a long-forgotten era. Exploring this airport may sound cool, but honestly, it's a journey that's just best left to the imagination and the history books and the YouTube videos.
Starting off this countdown, we have Amchitka Island. Located in Alaska, sections of this island are blurred out on Google Maps, and no one really knows why this is. But it may have to do with the nuclear testing that once took place there. From the 1950s to the 1970s, Amchitka Island was the site of US underground nuclear testing. Nowadays, they are running tests to see if the island has any radioactive leakage there. If there isn't, then in 2025 it could become a wildlife reserve. But again, why is half of the island blurred out? Maybe that's the section where the nuclear testing took place. But why is it still blurred? A lot of people think that the military is doing some suspicious illegal activities there, and that's why. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. In our 9th spot, we have 2207 Seymour Avenue. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. 2207 Seymour Avenue, located in Cleveland, Ohio, is a home where a horrific crime took place. From 2002 to 2004, Ariel Castro kidnapped 3 young women: Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Georgina De Jesus. He kept them captive in his home until 2013, when Amanda Berry escaped with her daughter and contacted the police. The police came to his house and rescued the other women. Castro was arrested within hours. He was sentenced to life plus 1,000 years in prison without parole. Due to the disturbing crimes that took place at his home, Google Maps decided to blur his house. In fact, the house has been named the House of Horrors. But a couple years back, his house was demolished to help the victims move on from their traumatizing past. Coming in at number 8, we have the French nuclear facility. The Arriva La Hague nuclear fuel reprocessing facility in France is another place that is blurred out on Google Maps. This facility opened in 1976 and is responsible for treating nuclear fuel from several countries. Here's the thing though, this facility hasn't always been blurred out. By using the Google Earth History tab, you can see old Google Earth images of this facility. So now, why all of a sudden is it blurred out? What is going on there? Well, it may have something to do with the controversy it has received and the backlash it received from Greenpeace. Since 1997, Greenpeace has been trying to shut it down, saying that they dump 1 million liters of liquid radioactive waste per day in the ocean. That is severely messed up if that's true. Maybe that's why it's blurred out, so that people don't see what they're really up to with their nuclear waste. Moving on to number 7, we have the French prison. There are a number of prisons that are blurred out on Google Earth, including the Beaumet prison in Marseille. Now, why do they blur out images of prisons? Well, a couple of reasons. One, for privacy. But the main reason is so that the criminals don't know the layout of the prison. Basically, this prison wasn't always blurred.
Following a successful jailbreak, France's Minister of Justice was like, why are there aerial images of this prison available online? And then that led to the prison getting blurred. But of course, you can still find older images of the prison on Google Maps that show what it looks like and its layout. In our 6th spot, we have the Antarctic ice shield. This is another pretty strange place to get blurred. But basically, halfway between Australia and Madagascar, there is a 22-kilometer long blur in the middle of the Antarctic ice shield. I mean, this place is one of the most isolated places on Earth. There's nothing but ice and penguins there. So why is it being blurred out? We don't know for sure, but people think that there is something hidden there that we're not allowed to see. Although it's thought to be owned by Australia, theory goes that Russia or the US have built a research facility there. The only way we'll know for sure is by visiting the place itself. So who's coming with me for this field trip? It'll be a lot of fun. Come on, just pack a snowsuit and lots of hot packs. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Moroa Island. Located in French Polynesia, this island was first used for nuclear testing in 1966 by France. These tests apparently took place until 1996. That's when the French president shut down the facility. Why? Well, Greenpeace found out that these tests were polluting the water as far as Peru and New Zealand. In fact, many locals in Tahiti have claimed they have been affected by the radiation from the tests. Nowadays, the island is off limit to visitors and is guarded by French forces, which is probably why half of the island is blurred on Google Maps. Or maybe it's because they're still doing these nuclear tests. We may never know. Moving on at number 4, we have Elmira Correctional Facility. Elmira Correctional Facility, also known as The Hills, is a maximum security state prison in New York. This is another facility blurred on Google Earth. Why? Well, a number of reasons. 1, they have fears of an aerial attack. Number 2, they have fears that someone will use this information to plan an escape. And number 3, the prison is highly secure. Why would they want images of the building online for everyone to see? But it turns out that this location got blurred after a number of riots and mass escapes. Moving on at number 3, we have North Korea. Okay, is it even shocking that North Korea has sections of its country blurred? I mean, they are so secretive, so this isn't a surprise at all. Now, the area that is blurred is along the country's western shore. So people have thought that they are hiding something there, maybe a secret military project. Who knows? I mean, hey, the country is hiding so many things. Like I said, this one doesn't really come as a surprise. In our 2nd spot, we have Paseo de los Naranjos. Located in Spain, this place translates to orange tree yard, and it is completely censored on Google Maps. No matter how close you try to zoom in on the map or the area close by, you won't be able to see anything. Why? Well, there's a lot of government buildings located there, so it's blurred out for security and privacy reasons, which makes sense. Many government or military buildings are blurred out on Google Maps for similar reasons. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Jeannette Island. Located in Russia, this island is said to contain a secret Russian military base. If you type this island into Google, you'll find a whole lot of nothing. Legit, it just looks like a bunch of water. It's not even registered on Google Maps as an island. When you type in its coordinates, you will see a message that says this island is unavailable. Now, before it was removed from the maps altogether, it wasn't even blurred out. It was actually blacked out. Like there was a full-on black mass just covering it. But when you zoomed in, you could see this icy mass, and that's all. According to Reddit user Exoplanetary Science, he said, and I quote, "Google rarely blacks out without reason. A search through Google Earth shows that this has been permanently blurred out, even in images dating back to the 1980s. I'm going to guess there's a concealed Russian military base located there, and possibly quite a substantial one." So, there you have it, folks, a secret Russian military base.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Room 206. This gives me Stephen King 1408 vibes, and I'm not sure that you're ready. Next time you visit Florida, make sure you read every customer review before you check into a hotel, because some of them might be full of ghosts. That might be a thing that you just might have to deal with. Room 206 at the Super on International Drive, apparently it's super haunted. Guests have reported the bed shaking in the middle of the night, probably terrible for your sleep, or freezing cold air even though the AC is turned off. And worst of all, guests guests have seen their bed look as though somebody was sleeping there moments before, even though it was perfectly made right before they checked in. Can ghosts squat? Is that legal? We've got a couple of spirit squatters in our room. Gotta move. Number 9, Disney on ice. Many families love to visit Orlando at this time of year. The theme parks there are spectacular, especially Disney World. I went once when I was younger, but I don't recall ever seeing a real life Walt Disney. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he died in 1966. Who knows? But never say never. One of Orlando's oldest tales is that Walt Disney had his body cryogenically frozen after his death. And right now, apparently it's being stored in a bunker underneath the theme park. I mean, that's a bit more creative than being cremated. I'll give him that. It's pretty Walt Disney of him just to freeze himself forever. A grad from the University of Central Florida Film School, Benjamin Lancaster, they actually made a film about this whole idea. It's called The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head. That's a family classic, some would say. Number 8, Scarlett O'Hara's. You're gonna need 2 pieces of ID for this next one, alright? Perhaps the most haunted bar in Florida, located in St. Augustine, Scarlett O'Hara's is haunted by a past owner. Many believe that spirit likes to make itself known to guests. That's always fun. Try and go grab a pint and now you got a ghoul in front of you. That spirit is one of George Coley. Now George sadly bit the bullet one night when he was in his bathtub, so now we have a series of unexplainable events. Plates and glasses will sometimes move across the bar on their own, and the jukebox keeps playing Help Me Rhonda even when it's unplugged. So that's absolutely terrifying. If you want to check it out now, be warned, because it's a full-on tourist attraction at this point. But if you go, you can pose alongside the same bathtub that George Coley died in. Yeah, how lovely is that? Are we going to Disney World? Nah, even better, Scarlett O'Hara's. Yeah, you're gonna love it. Number 7, Stranahan House. You don't want to be stranded at the Stranahan House. It's gonna be bad news. Fort Lauderdale has a few haunted hidden gems, and the oldest house just happens to be the most haunted. What do you know? What odds are that? What odds are that? What are those odds? There we go. The house's OG owner was Frank Stranahan, and today, if you visit ye old stomping grounds, well, you might catch Frank in a photo or two. It's said that Frank still oversees the place, and he regularly shows up in guests' photos. So this ghost likes to photobomb. That's pretty amazing. I kind of like that. I suppose being trapped in the same house for all of eternity probably gets a little boring from time to time. Just to pop into a photo, throw some peace signs up, and then disappear back into the walls. Ivy Stranahan, Frank's late wife, she also has made an appearance or two. Nice. True love is haunting the same house forever. Guests have felt a cold hand on their shoulder, and her perfume still lingers in the hallway. Must have been some good, strong stuff. Nice. Now, it's not all fun and games. Augustus Stranahan, aka Frank's father, well, his ghost likes to throw books. It's really aggressive, so heads up for that, I guess, if you go. Cheers. Number 6, the Plaza Resort and Spa. Ah, yes, kick back and relax with ghosts. It's just what you want. You're never alone, I guess. That's a plus side. The Plaza Resort and Spa sounds like a relaxing getaway until you start looking up footage of the actual resort. One's gonna get your attention for sure. Back in August 2013, security cameras captured late night footage of this shape-shifting ghost, some sort of spirit, some scary blob. It's bad news, really, in any regard. What happened was the original building was destroyed by fire in 1909, and current staff will testify that they've seen the ghosts of victims caught in that blaze. How they know? I have no idea, but apparently they do know. It's a lot of details for one ghost appearance. One of the most common sightings includes a woman whose spirit is known to mess with the elevators and make items in the kitchen disappear. Okay, really? That last one's for sure an employee stealing food. He's like, oh yeah, I don't know. I think a ghost ate that cheesecake, boss. I don't know, spooky stuff, spooky. Number 5, the Blue Anchor Pub. Another bar, another haunted bill to pay. Here we go, debit or credit. Heading over to Delray Beach, the Blue Anchor Pub was built in 1840s in London, but the wooden interior was sent to New York City and then later on sent to Florida in 1996. So yeah, these spirits must be confused. They go from Jack the Ripper to some dude wearing a Yankees hat talking to a TV. Trapped in the wooden interior is the ghost of one Bertha Starkey, who was sadly killed by her husband back in the 1840s. Now, you know Bertha is lurking about when you hear rattling pots in the kitchen, and sometimes if you're really unlucky, you'll hear wailing in the middle of the night. Nice. Again, horrible sleep at this place. The Blue Anchor sounds like a really relaxing time, but every night at 10 o'clock, the current owners will blast a ship horn to scare away her spirit. I don't know, I feel like blaring a ship horn at 10 p.m. is more jarring than some pots and pans moving sometimes. You know what I mean? I'd rather hear the pots and pans than in the middle of the night. No way. Number 4, the Biltmore Hotel. Another hotel to avoid at all costs. Awesome, we love these ones. First of all, do you actually like staying at a hotel? Some people love it. Some people find it super relaxing. I can't help but think about what went on in the bed before me. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, why does this part of the bed feel a little bit caved in? What's going on here? Every time I'm in a hotel, I have the worst dreams and I can't sleep at all. The Biltmore Hotel in the city of Coral Gables is also one of the most haunted hotels in Florida. You've probably heard of this at some point. It all started in 1926 during initial construction. The Biltmore witnessed a foul killing on the 13th floor. The 13th floor of all floors, my God. The Biltmore was also turned into a military hotel during World War II before ultimately being closed and then abandoned later in 1968. Now, the city renovated the hotel later on in the 80s, but it didn't take long for ghost stories to start to spread. It's horrible, horrible past, I mean, more than fair. Now, of course, the most activity is on the 13th floor, so if you do check this one out, really double down, go to the haunted floor, you know, don't just look outside and then book. Go in, stay a night. I can't believe some buildings don't have a 13th floor. Can you imagine that? Well, they do, but everyone pretends that they don't. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, it's 12. I don't know, we'll see. Are you a 13th floor believer? Comment down below. Me personally, I don't think so. Because it's the 14th, or the 12th, or the 13th. I don't know anymore. No one knows anymore. It goes 11, 12, 14. You're like, really? What's the 14s? We know what's going on here, come on. Number 3. Tampa Theater. If you're a fellow theater kid, you're also gonna love this one. Here we go. Tampa Theater opened up in 1926. The theater is now said, of course, to be haunted by a woman that was struck and killed by a carriage on the property. Imagine being hit by a carriage. It's so slow. This was actually before the theater was built, so her spirit has been there for a while. If you go to Tampa Theater today, you might catch a glimpse of that woman in a white gown walking across the mezzanine hallway. This time without carriages whipping through, hopefully, sans carriage. Imagine telling somebody in front of you to sit down during a show, then they just disappear. You're like, I think that was a ghost. I think that was probably a ghost. It says in the playbill, ghost, so maybe that was her. Tampa Theater, of course, has leaned into these claims. Now they offer Ghosts of Tampa Theater tour, where guests can learn about its haunted history. I'd love to do this tour. I don't know, maybe I'll go to Florida. Who knows? I won't. I'm like, I'm probably not going to. Number 2, Key West Cemetery. A cemetery that's haunted. Get out of town. You don't say. The Beachside Cemetery was built in 1847. Now, it was built specifically for victims of a hurricane that occurred a year prior in 1846. That's terrible. Now, this cemetery is the final resting place for roughly 80,000 to 100,000 people. So yeah, I can only assume there's a ghost or two hanging out. That's extremely tragic. Walking through a graveyard at night is scary enough anytime, but Key West Cemetery is so specific that the entire time you're walking through, you feel connected in a way. Now, me personally, I'm all set. I don't want to feel connected to an 1846 tragedy. I'm all set. I'll go the long way around the cemetery, then I'll meet you on the other side, if anything. But if you're into this kind of thing, they also offer ghost tours, so knock yourself out. There you go. Apparently, it's too scary for children, so that's a plus. Lines will be a little shorter than usual. And finally, number 1, St. Augustine Lighthouse. A scary lighthouse? How? How is that possible? The St. Augustine Lighthouse is located, of course, in Florida and was built between 1871 and 1874. And it's considered Florida's first official lighthouse ever. Imagine that. Boom, let there be light. Hey, I made you a lighthouse. Enjoy, we're all good now. There have been several tragic events over the following years, seeing as it's the first lighthouse ever. Seen a lot of history. But even during initial construction, there were several freak accidents on site. Today, said spirits are still lurking about. Sightings of shadowy figures are common, but just one time, somebody saw a hand coming through the tower door. Yeah, a floaty hand, like from Idle Hands. How terrifying is that? Can you imagine just a Smash Bros hand just lurking near you? Several guests have reported furniture also moving around on its own, which is definitely a hazard. And one person even said that they had some of their arm hairs plucked off of them while they were in the basement. Probably that floaty weird hand just doink. Give me one of those. Another guest felt someone grab their ankle at one point while walking down a hallway, which actually caused them to trip and fall down, so something's going on. I don't know what this ghost hand wants, but it's pretty chaotic to me, it seems. I think the ghost hand wants you to click like if you like this video. I think that's what it wants, really.
Number 10, the Bisman Building. The Bisman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Brewer Hotel, Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building, though, is haunted. While here many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows, and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl, Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah. 12. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn. Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6. The Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5. Woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no for me. Number 4. Ridges Asylum. Ridges Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building is the outline of a body where Margaret Shrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Mackey's. Built in 1850, Bobby Mackey's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams, and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Sedamsville Rectory. The Sedamsville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it. Coming in at number 10 is Monte Cristo Homestead. Monte Cristo Homestead is a historic homestead that was constructed by local pioneer Christopher William Crawley in 1885. It's a double-story late Victorian style manor standing on a hill overlooking the town. While it belonged to the Crawleys, it was riddled with death as a stable boy burnt to death, a girl was thrown down the stairs, a maid lobbed off a balcony, and a caretaker was shot dead, amongst others, so of course this place is haunted. Current owner Olive Ryan says, "I've had a hand on my shoulder, I've had my name called when I've been here by myself, I've heard footsteps on the balcony and gone out and there's no one there." And now all of this started just 2 days after moving in, when she saw from a distance beaming bright lights coming from the home, which at the time was only lit by one kerosene lamp. The lights were gone by the time the car made it down the long driveway, she said. Other reported experiences include a medium who was struck in the head, a young girl's separate asthma attack-like episode despite no medical history, several strange occurrences involving animals, and multiple reports of presences, footsteps, and voices from the boarders, visitors, and family members. Number 9. Devil's Pool. According to Aboriginal folklore, a young runaway bride who fell to her death at Devil's Pool is believed to be the reason why so many young men's lives, especially male tourists, have been taken at the site. The legend begins with a young woman named Ulana who married an elder from her own tribe. Yet shortly after they married, she fell in love with another man, Daiga, from a touring tribe. Now it's said that the two lovers, Ulana and Daiga, ran away from their tribes and fled to what is now known as Devil's Pool, where they were captured by the elders. Yet Ulana broke free and leapt into the creek waters, calling for Daiga to follow. She hit the water crying out for her love Daiga, which shook the water into action. The land vibrated around her, sending boulders flying into the creek and causing the water to plunge forward at alarming rates. Now it's said if you listen closely, it's thought you can still hear Ulana's cries for her lost love, according to the indigenous legend. Her curse on the spookily named Devil's Pool, also known as Babinda boulders in tropical North Queensland, has lingered ever since. Ulana is said to have lured 17 men to a watery grave in the past half century, remembered with the eerie saying, "He came for a visit and stayed forever." Now, if I were a man, I would not risk going here. Number 8. Quarantine Station. Set up as a vital safeguard in 1833 to prevent immigrants arriving in Australia from spreading diseases to the main settlement in the city, many migrants spent their final days at the compound before succumbing to deadly viruses. Officially, close to 600 people died at the station out of the 26,000 who stayed there between the quarantine site being founded in the 1830s and its closure in the 1980s. Now the site now operates as a luxury hotel resort, but it is extremely haunted. Hundreds of spirit encounters have occurred over the years, varying from apparitions, people suddenly feeling nauseated and unwell, to objects being moved without any explanation. Several nurses, as well as a spirit known as matron, are said to patrol the hospital ward, while a mortician in a top hat, nicknamed by staff as Mr. Slimy, has been spotted walking around the grounds. A fisherman from China called Mr. Chen often roams around the third-class living quarters, where passengers who were not of a white descent had to live while at the compound. Now around 20 children are said to haunt the site, but a little boy called Isaac Lowe's is one of the more frequent spirits to be seen. Number 7. Old Helensburgh Railway Tunnel. Sitting just south of Sydney is Old Helensburgh Railway Tunnel, said to be the home of a ghost of a miner, Robert Hales, who died in 1895. He'd been walking home along the short 80-meter long tunnel after a long day at work. A steam train raced along the tracks from behind and hit the hapless miner. The force of the impact was so great that his body was ripped in two, with each half scattered meters apart. Now as far as the legend goes, the ghost of Mr. Hales still haunts the tunnel as a mischievous spirit, chases after trains, and even runs through tourists. A lot of people say they had experienced weird stuff in there, seeing things, sensations, someone watching them, a ghost tour guide, Craig Bloxham said. Number 6. Picton. Being the most haunted town in Australia, Picton is also known for its countryside views and paranormal gardens. The town is located about 80 kilometers southwest of Sydney and has had a historical significance due to its buildings and railway tunnels. The Mushroom Tunnel, also known as former Red Bank Range Railway, is a haunted tunnel as the stories say that there was a terrible railway accident involving a woman named Emily Bollard. The report suggests people often witness Emily and 2 other women ghosts and also hear some scary voices, crying, and shrieks. Many people have also reported a sudden drop of temperature, eerie shadows, a gust of winds, orbs, body chills, and many weird happenings inside the tunnel. Number 5. Princess Theatre. In the late 1880s, a local opera singer named Fred Baker, seeing failure in his performances, renamed himself as Federici and posed as a European singer. After this, people started flocking to theaters to hear this exotic singer. Now in March 1888, while he was completing a show at the Princess Theatre, Federici hit a high note as he was descending on the stage on a platform. It was at this time that he had a heart attack and died on the spot. His death was witnessed by a stagehand. When the other actors found out about his abrupt death, they were shocked as they swore he had been on stage with them after the final curtain to bask in applause sometime after he had already died. Since then, it's rumored that the theater is haunted by his ghost, and there have been numerous reported sightings of Federici's ghost over the years by performers and staff. Now, rather than trying to expel him from the theater, it was tradition to reserve him a seat in the theater's 3rd row so he can watch the performances amongst the audience. Number 4. National Film and Sound Archive. Before it was the National Film and Sound Archive, this building was the Australian Institute of Anatomy, where it housed hundreds of human skeletons and body parts and animal specimens, including Firelap's heart, Ned Kelly's skull, and a mummy from Papua New Guinea. Staff in recent years have witnessed objects moving by themselves and weird noises coming from recording booths, which once served as dissection labs. The foyer of the building is lined with 9 busts of famous Australians. Now, when these Australians will pop out as an apparition from time to time, it's said that people will be out in the building in the late afternoon and they see an outline of an elderly man, dressed well, and he comes out of the wall near where his ashes are. Now, he doesn't move much and then suddenly sucks back into where the ashes are behind the wall. Number 3. Fremantle Prison. Originally known as the Convict Establishment, the Fremantle Prison was built by convicts between 1852 and 1859 using limestone quarried on site. During its period of operation, the prison housed the majority of the state's thieves and rogues, as well as people who ended others' lives, and during both world wars, it was used by the Australian Army as a military prison for prisoners of war. In its time as a jail, 44 people were executed at its gallows. Now, just one of them was a woman, Martha Rendell. Martha was convicted of ending the lives of 3 of her offspring, and legend has it that her face occasionally appears in the chapel window. Now, the sound of rattling keys, disembodied footsteps, and voices haunt the building as well, as any visitors who take pictures with the gallows tend to appear headless when they look at it after. Now, cameras tend to fail, there are orbs and strange light anomalies, flying bin lids, and funny smells. Several guards claim to have seen the apparition of a man in black, and one of them even fainted when he laid eyes on the figure. Now, no one knows who he is or why he's there, and that is just terrifying. Number 2. Central Railway Station. While tens of thousands of commuters may pass through Central Station as they make their way to work every day, deep beneath the platforms is a hidden world. Abandoned tunnels snake underground and have sat unused for decades. Stripped bare but largely still intact, platforms 26 and 27 were built in the 1970s on the site of the old Devonshire Street Cemetery. The bodies laying in the graveyard were reburied across the city decades before the station was built, but workers recently inspecting the unused platform have reported some eerie experiences. Sydney train officials have reported hearing voices echoing against the walls, and even the sounds of children playing. Director of Operations with Sydney Trains, Tony Eade, also claims to have heard the sound of children's voices on a visit to station's never-used tunnels. He previously said workers down here said they would hear kids playing and, thinking they were vandals, would go and investigate. On one occasion, I was down here with a radio crew and we all heard children playing. Take that as you wish, but we all heard it. And coming in at number 1 is Arundel Mental Hospital. Arundel Mental Hospital was an Australian psychiatric hospital where construction began in 1864 and was opened for patients in 1867. Now, with a building this old and with walls that have seen so many horrors, it is not a shock that this place is haunted. It was finally closed as an asylum in 1993, and at its height, Arundel had 1,000 patients and is a large complex with up to 70 interesting historic abandoned buildings. While reports exist of apparitions, phantom sounds, visitors experiencing nausea, fainting, and pain, some ghosts from Arundel's past have made themselves known to those who are alive today. Now, J Ward is one of the most haunted places, as visitors report feeling ill and suddenly afraid. Others slip into a trance, only released from it when they exit the building. Some people have even been bitten or pushed while walking through J Ward, and the ward is also said to be haunted by 3 prisoners who were hanged and buried on the property. They are said to be restless because they weren't given a proper burial, and their graves are only marked with 3 scratches on the prison wall. Apparitions have also been seen in the women's ward donning old-time nurses' uniforms and disappearing into stone walls.